Hi, this is Brandon with Kennebec Life and Craft. What I have for us today is a small handcrafted piece of furniture that I made about a month ago. And I thought that it would be interesting to just kind of work through a piece of furniture together, the joinery, the materials, how it all comes together in the end. And so stick around and that's exactly what we'll do. As a native New Englander, Shaker style furniture just screams New England to me. And that's because Shaker communities were actually quite prominent here within the 18th and 19th centuries. And they've dwindled quite a bit, but there is still one last Shaker community that resides here in the state of Maine, with just a few members left. But this style of furniture really is what it is because the Shakers who they were a simple people, right? Their furniture was not ornate because they themselves as a people were not ornate. And so the furniture really did reflect who they were as a community. And so when you look at one of their pieces of furniture, whether it be a side table like this, whether it be a bureau of some kind, like a chest of drawers, or some of the other kinds of pieces that they're known for, you look at those pieces of furniture and you really get this sense right away. The furniture is what it is because they were who they were. So first, when you consider the overall form of this thing, you have a simple top, you have four legs, you have aprons, and you have the front dovetailed drawer. And as a piece, it really has the look of being quite delicate, and that's because it has various tapers on the legs, it has bevels on the top, and so it does have a delicate appearance, but make no mistake, this is certainly not a fragile piece of furniture. Now the materials are cherry, and most of it is local, like the aprons and the legs. It is local material that I had actually picked up myself one day, and a friend had milled it for me several years ago. And so I know that the legs and the aprons and the front of the drawer, they are all local. But the top of it is not local. This is from somewhere else that I had purchased recently. I believe it's from originally Ohio. I should note from the top that all of the joinery on this piece has been done by hand. I did that all right here in the shop. However, I did mill all of this on my machines at home before bringing it into this shop to do the joinery. And then at the end, I did sand the entire thing with a sander. And so all of this has been done by hand other than those couple of things. And I had a really great time doing it. Now I demonstrate furniture making at our local fair each year. And one of the questions I was surprised to get so much this year was, how do you attach a tabletop to the rest of the piece? And it's very simple. If you notice underneath the top, we have some holes that I have already drilled. And then when you come up to the piece itself, there are slots here that were created by the biscuit joiner. Now those are meant to receive these, which we call Z-clips, and those attach in there, and then you screw them up to the top, and that's how you connect the piece together. Very simple. But when you consider this tabletop itself, you have several pieces of wood that have all been glued together in order to try to make a nice uniform top. And then underneath here, we have a nice bevel, which is strongly indicative of the Shaker style. And that really makes a nice profile on this cherry to give that a lighter look. Now, what's important about the legs is that these are tapered only on the inside. And so there's a little bit of an optical illusion going on here. If you look closely, they are not tapered on all four sides. They are just tapered on the two insides. And where you start and end that taper really is up to your own preferences. I was working off of a set of plans that I had, and they wanted the legs to go much more narrow toward the bottom, and I didn't want to do that. And so I just sort of started my taper where I thought looked good, and I ended it where I thought looked good, and I'm really happy with my decisions here. Now the way these aprons are joined together with the legs is really quite standard when we think about traditional mortise and tenon joinery. All of these aprons have been created to have tenons that are on the end of each side, and they go into mortises that are made into the legs. And so those slip right into each other, and all of these were made simply with a mortising chisel, my saws, chisels, that kind of thing. But perhaps the more unique side of things, and maybe a bit more confusing to newer furniture builders, is you have these two rails right here. Now this bottom rail is again made with traditional mortise and tenon. You create tenons on this rail here that get received into this leg with a small mortise, and then the same on the other side. But then on the top, what is unique is that you have dovetails here that are sort of a half-blind dovetail that go right into the top of the legs, and that's how this rail is received into the legs so that you can have this slot here to insert your drawer. Now I saved the best for last, and that is the drawer, which is really the creme a la creme of the piece itself, because really I would say it took me about as long to make the drawer as it did to make the rest of this piece. Now this is made in a traditional way where we have the half-blind dovetails on either side of this piece, and then on the back we have through dovetails. You don't need to have the half-blind on the back end, and so you just do the easier, or what I think are easier, through dovetails. Now on the front of the piece, I chose this front because I sort of liked this darker streak that was going through it. But then we have this knob, and again, this knob really is indicative of the shaker style. If you were to look up a bunch of shaker style knobs, you would see this sort of mushroom look when it comes to the kinds of knobs that they had made. Now I made this knob not that long ago, and I used my drill press in order to do that. And I have a video on how to make small knobs like this on a drill press, and so I'll make sure that I link that below so you can check out exactly how that was made. But otherwise, what you have here is a nice drawer that fits in, slides on runners that are attached to the insides of the apron, and goes in nice. So anyway, that's just a quick walkthrough of a normal piece of furniture. A piece like this does not take expert craftsmanship. It doesn't take many years in order to be able to accomplish something like this. Really what it takes is a little bit of know-how and a whole lot of desire, and I think that you can get there. You know, one of the things that people comment on all of the time is that, wow, that takes a lot of patience. And the thing is, I'm not sure that it takes a lot of patience. What it really takes is a desire. And if you have the desire, you can build something like this, and you can probably do it a whole lot sooner than you realize. So hey, until next time, God bless you, and we'll see you then.